Welcome back to Digestible Academia, the podcast where we break down complex academic research into something a bit more digestible. I'm your host, Chloe Lane, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Kerry Ruffle. Today we'll be diving into an important and increasingly relevant topic, the environmental cost of AI.
In our last episode, we discussed how seriously the world was taking the issue of sustainability. With climate change swiftly reaching the point of becoming irreversible, we explored where the priorities of leaders should be focused when it comes to taking action to protect the planet. We also explored the trade-off between progress and impact, where CEOs are enhancing humanity's capabilities for living and working, whether that's Jeff Bezos embracing space tourism or Sam Altman's OpenAI taking on greater capabilities, we considered the consequences these innovations have had for the planet. And whilst it's easy to see the environmental cost of fossil fuel-driven rockets, it's less clear for us to understand how embracing and embedding AI is damaging our world.
And to help us paint a clearer picture of what the environmental cost of AI really is, we're joined today by Dr. Albert Plugge. Albert Plugge is a full professor of ESG Transformation and Digital Innovation at Nyenrode Business University, where he leads the lecture series on digital business ecosystems. Describing himself as a hybrid in his field, Dr. Plugge blends academic research with hands-on consulting expertise. In his role at KPMG, he supports companies in developing and implementing digital strategies, helping them respond to fast-changing markets with agility, new business models, and ecosystem-based approaches. His research dives into how digital tools enable ESG reporting and transformation.
In his chat with us, Dr. Plugge shared that the power that goes into using AI services like ChatGPT can require as much as 10 times more power than simple search engines use to generate similar results for users. With the nature of humans' interaction with AI ranging from general business use to the more frivolous exploration and experimentation, at least until the novelty wears off, Dr. Plugge says that this is raising important questions about how we use such tools and the unseen consequences of us doing so.
Professor Dr. Albert Plugge, thank you so much for joining us today on Digestible Academia. So we're delighted to have you on the podcast today, and we'll be discussing something that's becoming increasingly important, which is the environmental cost of AI. So for any of our listeners who might not be familiar with your work, could you please briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about yourself and your research, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm more than happy to. I'm actually considered as a kind of a hybrid in the market because I'm fulfilling a double role. I'm working at KPMG in the Netherlands, involved in digitalization, AI, sourcing arrangements, and sustainability. And besides my role at KPMG, I'm also associated with Nyenrode Business University in the Netherlands. And I'm holding the chair ESG Transformation and Digital Innovation. So that all goes to the link between sustainability and digitalization, including the role of AI.
So you're a man of many hats.
Multiple hats at the moment. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So you may have seen recently in the news that Sam Altman, who is obviously OpenAI's CEO, has recently revealed that saying please and thank you to ChatGPT is actually costing the company millions in electricity. So I'd love to get your opinion on this and what you think this actually reveals about the environmental costs of these seemingly minor AI interactions.
Yeah, well, there is a large debate going on in the market based on, let's say, the quote of Sam Altman. And actually, he is right, because if you dive a bit deeper into, let's say, the consequences of electricity, energy consumption, water consumption, etc., a lot of these, let's say, texts, messages will result in an increase of energy consumption. So by average, I would say that if you use, let's say, ChatGPT, it will have a 10 times more impact compared to what we called a regular Google search. So overall, yes, there is a large impact when it comes to energy consumption. And for instance, right now there's the debate going on about GPT-4. So if you, let's say, raise a query, it consumes about 0.3 watt hours for a typical, I would say, text-based question. But if you extend this text message for a very long query, it may increase up to 2.5 or even 40 watt hours for a text query. So if you bundle all these kind of text messages into a large pile, you will definitely see a significant impact when it comes to energy consumption. So typically he is right about this key topic.
And of course, we know that energy consumption is a contributor to things like climate change. And it's fascinating what you just said about, the comparison between what you might input into a service like ChatGPT in comparison to how you might put a similar request into Google, and the differences there in how much energy they then use. So I wondered if you could explain a little bit further, sort of how exactly does typing a question or a simple thank you into a service like ChatGPT contribute to climate change, and how is that different from using a search engine like Google or others?
Yeah, I think typically if you dive a bit deeper into these kind of AI questions and quotes and prompts, you typically see that AI is using a specific model. And we often use what we call AI token, multiple tokens. So you have an AI message, a query, for instance, it's broken down in AI tokens. And the token is actually kind of a unit of text messages. And these messages are actually queried about a large data lake that try to build relationship between different type of messages and clarifications. And I would say the hard work of all these kind of AI tokens, which are trying to create relationships and make sense of all these kinds of relationships, that is typically, let's say, increasing a lot of the energy consumption. So it's more, let's say, bundling, trying to build relationships between text messages, which is increasing the energy consumption. And that's typically different compared to, for instance, a Google query, which makes use of different kind of text techniques and technologies, which are rather simple compared to AI, which in turn reduces the energy consumption.
Yeah. And I suppose the ways in which we engage with it are different as well, because you don't type a thank you to Google after it's found what you need. So I wondered, is there a way that we can measure the scale of the impact as it stands, or how we can measure it, in terms of how we might, basically inform our own understandings of what the consequences of our own use? Is there a way it can be broken down into simple terms so that casual users can understand what the impact of their usage is?
Yeah, I just mentioned the example of, let's say, AI compared to a Google search.
Yeah.
So with it, that's multiplied by 10 as a kind of a rule of thumb, I would say. But even if you train, for instance, I would say a rather simple type of AI text model. If you just think about training quite simple text messages by means of AI, a recent study revealed that, let's say, when it comes to energy consumption, the energy that is, I would say, spilled is equal to 300 flights between New York and San Francisco.
Wow.
So only for training a small, I would say, text message that can be understood by AI, it's already creating a lot of impact when it comes to our environment and planet.
Wow.
Wow, that's crazy, though, that comparison. Like, what do you think that would be on an individual level then? Do you think?
Yeah,
per person, what sort of comparisons could we make for that? Say, if I used AI for a week, say, what sort of comparison would that be?
I haven't made a kind of a model
I
to
know, just
calculate that. But for instance, recently I came across quite of a rather simple example.
yeah.
Someone in a snooker hall was asking ChatGPT about the positioning on the balls of the table.
Okay.
So rather than having a nice discussion with your friends to say, hey, what should be my approach? They ask a chat GPT about what should be the ultimate positioning to handle this game. And that was already increasing a lot of energy. So I haven't calculated this
Yeah, of
example
course.
for a week, but it was extremely, yeah, let's say familiar that everyone understands if you're asking these kind of questions, rather simple questions, it will have a significant impact on our, let's say, environment and specifically energy consumption.
Yeah. I think we're all guilty of that, asking ChatGPT very simple questions. We probably should just learn the answer to on Google. But yeah.
Or it's just that casual like exploration of what it can do, or just testing it out with, I suppose, frivolous things. Because like you say, everyone has been a little bit curious of how to use it. And we just use that analogy of the snooker player. You could ask your friend over the table for advice. You don't need to ask ChatGPT how to do it. So
So obviously, we know there are loads of different types of AI platform now. Microsoft has got one. We've got obviously ChatGPT, which is used by lots of people. Yeah, there's so many. Are some of them more environmentally damaging than others? Or are they all sort of around the same level, would you say?
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about your previous remark about can we actually measure it?
Yeah.
What we see from a more technology perspective that if you have, let's say, a large query of AI prompts, from a technology view, these kind of queries are broken down in what we call AI tokens, let's say units of text. Recently I read an article, an academic article, in which they actually try to measure the impact of using AI. And if you have, let's say, a small AI token, a unit of text, which is, let's say, right now equal to, let's say, $20
Yeah.
specifically from an energy consumption, there are a lot of, let's say, improvements initiated right now to, let's say, limit the degree of energy consumption. And that's specifically focusing on what we call smart programming or smart coding, in which, let's say, such a new model, by actually getting rid of all the extra coding rules and within your program, for instance, it can actually reduce, let's say, the degree of energy consumption by 200%.
Wow.
So from an industry perspective, you see a lot of companies diving into this topic about, okay, how can we actually decrease the degree of energy consumption? And by what we call smart programming or smart coding, that's actually one way to achieve that goal.
That's really interesting. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, going back to my question, should we be using certain AI services over others because do they have different environmental costs or are they all sort of the same level? Would Microsoft's, for example, be less environmentally damaging than ChatGPT? Or is it hard to say at this point?
No, there is a kind of what we called some insights from different kind of services, and it all begins with a kind of a definition. What are we talking about? So, if let's say we are running AI on top of a data center, roughly 12% of all the data center footprint is occupied by AI based workloads. So you have running your data center. It requires a lot of water consumption, energy consumption, and on top of that, you have your AI application and services. So if you take the example of, let's say, a rather simple form of AI, in which you use AI specifically for, let's say, monitoring tasks or the initiation of a couple of, let's say, specific tasks, or even simple forms of decision making, I would say, based on research, it has, let's say, a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10. And of course, 10 is the most intense way of using your energy consumption.
Yeah.
If you compare that to, let's say, more Gen AI type of text modules, which are much more consuming, you're already talking about, let's say, a factor of 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. So dependent on the type of AI service or action, we difficultly can make a distinction between the type of AI and the impact from an environmental perspective.
Yeah. So in a practical way, how can we use these technologies in a more responsible and greener way? Is it as simple as just not asking, from an individual perspective, asking ChatGPT, for example, really simple questions? Or is there something bigger we should be doing? Should we not be using them at all?
Well, I think that there is at least one major challenge, is that we as users are hardly confronted with, let's say, the impact of using AI.
Yeah.
So we don't feel the pain of using AI and the impact from an energy consumption perspective, for instance. So what we see in practice is that there are a lot of initiatives that are taken by the industry. One of them is what we call green data centers. So there are initiatives to develop a kind of a new gen data center, which is based on a mix of green and gray energy. And these new kind of data centers can even swap AI applications to the most ultimate green zones, as they call it. So if you can predict that tomorrow there will be much more sunshine and wind compared to today, you can already swap your AI applications to green zones, which are actually fueled by solar energy or wind energy. So these kind of more industrial type of data centers are already being developed and built. A second one is what I just mentioned, green or smart programming. I actually see IT contracts which are signed by clients towards their IT service providers, in which the service providers are already contractually bind to optimize their AI applications to use less energy. So the pressure is on the service providers just to show how they decrease the degree of energy consumption. And I think the third one, interesting, is what we call life cycle management from the context of AI. So if you're, let's say, creating a new AI solution, of course, you have to produce that kind of solution, then you have to use it, and then you have your, what we typically use, the end of life cycle. And from all the three the perspectives, we see initiatives like the circular economy.
Yeah.
Just as an example, there are a lot of, let's say, technology firms which produce hardware.
Yeah.
And already 75% of hardware like switches, routers, firewalls, they can be, let's say, viewed from the perspective of the circular economy. Let's say reuse, repair, remanufacture. So a lot of, I would say, initiatives already taken by the industry.
So I
So
think
you think there's not much we can really do on an individual level then?
Besides the fact that it's much better to build your relationships along a snooker game and ask some questions to your friends.
Yeah.
I think that's more from a behavioral perspective. We actually don't feel the need, the pain that we are confronted with, let's say, the effects of environmental impact right now.
Yeah.
So that needs to change. Yeah. So maybe next gen, let's say, price models will definitely change our behavior in the markets.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've sort of covered quite extensively at this point how creators and organisations can act to or to act to ensure their creations don't carry such a heavy environmental cost. We've looked at that a little bit already. There was something that you said earlier about different types of AI use and our responsibility there. And it occurs to me one thing we haven't really challenged yet is that AI creation isn't just text-based. There's animation, there's pictures, videos, all this sort of thing now that you can do at the click of a button. I wondered, I mean, I'm guessing, does that carry a heavier cost because more goes into it in terms of creating such things? Is that a more complex usage than a text query? And therefore, are there things there that can be done to help reduce sort of, the impact that those might have on energy usage and on the planet as a result?
Yeah, and I think coming back to, let's say, our previous discussion about what kind of AI solutions will have a certain impact from an environmental perspective, I think if you had, say, the first category that's more based on AI solutions that are used for monitoring purposes, rather simple
Yeah.
analysis tasks, for instance, that I would say that's a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10. Then you have more the text type of messages, an 8. But if you will use the full potential, including video animations, etc., well, that's, I would say, ultimately a 10 on a scale from 1 to 10.
Yeah.
Because that's even using all the, let's say, the capabilities of AI right now, in which in the background, AI is using rather simple data, more text-heavy data, and specifically the more animation type of data. So that's the full potential, including, let's say, the most important impact from an environmental perspective.
Yeah. So when it comes to that question of responsibility of how these things are used and reducing, the economic impact of it, I guess that comes down to your earlier point of behaviour. And it's how you choose to use these services that are now so easily available to us. Do we choose to create an image using AI rather than by traditional methods? Do we choose to ask a question of a chat service rather than Googling or asking a colleague? I guess it comes down to smart thinking and maybe even regulation from an industry perspective as to how much they engage with these technologies and why.
Yeah, I think there is at least one interesting discussion, debate in the market right now, is that also businesses are confronted with, let's say, an increase of energy consumption. And there is already a discussion between, let's say, the industry as a whole and individual businesses to say, okay, if you're using AI kind of solutions, functionality and features, maybe we as an industry will just develop a new kind of price model, which actually means that businesses are affected by an increase of the cost level of using energy, specifically from an AI perspective. And that could be kind of a game changer, because if companies and the users, let's say the employees within a company, are actually confronted with these kind of effects, well, for sure, then there will be new policies within companies to reduce the amount of AI solutions. And we are already, let's say, using different kind of co-pilot alike type of features within companies. But if you can decrease that level, for instance, by not using animations if it is not necessary, well, for instance, that will have an effect on companies and as such on the behavior of their employees.
So we've talked quite a lot about, the negative environmental impact of using AI in companies and individually. But what are some of the positive ways that AI can be used to help, industries, governments, and societies to operate in a more efficient and green manner, would you say, based on your expertise?
That's I would say the other side of the medal, the
Yeah,
green side of the medal. And because right now we are only discussing what is the environmental impact of
Yeah.
using AI and other kind of IT solutions. It's also, let's say, flipping the medal to what we called AI for green.
yeah,
So I already see that in the Netherlands I was involved in a couple of insurance companies who use AI to actually assess the impact of environmental risks on their clients. So one of these companies are actually ensuring manufacturing plants, and they try to at least create insights into the risks of, let's say, floodings within the Netherlands, because we have a lot of canals, rivers, etc.
Yeah.
So AI is already actively used to create an impact assessment to define insurance risks. And the insights are actually used to start a discussion with their clients. So maybe, let's say, the insurance fee needs to be increased. And ultimately, it could even mean that an insurance company will stop to ensure specific production plans. So that's a bit of the negative side.
Mm.
The positive side is that big tech firms are already using digital platforms to collect, analyze, and report carbon emissions, for instance, carbon dioxide emissions, travel emissions, and also energy consumption. So in that case, these digital platforms, which are, I would say, heavily based on AI solutions and features, are actually used to report on your data. So yes, we do see the example of what we call the energy hubs. So for sure, also in the UK, but also in the Netherlands, we have beautiful examples of municipalities who are establishing an energy hub within certain zones within their village or city. Energy is created by using solar and wind energy. It's stored in a large battery, and also, let's say, citizens can just use the energy to charge your car, for instance. And AI solutions are actually used to calculate the amount of energy in the battery and also define if, let's say, additional gray energy from the energy grid is necessary. So AI is actually used in a positive way, to use as much as green energy as possible.
Mhm. So, for those companies that are looking to make a more positive environmental contribution, particularly in their uses of sort of AI and new tech, is there any sort of standard pieces of advice that you could offer that might guide them in devising more effective sustainability strategies, or perhaps there is some signposting you can provide for further reading or research?
Well, I think there are actually a lot of, let's say, websites, blogs that are addressing the importance of ESG, sustainability, and the role of digitalization, including the role of AI. That could be very helpful. From a research perspective, we have, of course, market research. So we have, let's say, the typical market research companies like Gartner, IDC, Forrester, etc. They provide a lot of practical insights when it comes to the use of AI for green. So that's a way to go. Of course, we have scientific research, but I must be honest, scientific research is always lacking behind. So right now I'm conducting multiple research studies, but before you can actually present and publish your outcome, it will cost you at least half a year up till a year to publish your results. So market research firms are always more, let's say, responsive when it comes to fast insights. And more sustainable insights, broader perspectives can be easily read from a scientific perspective.
Yeah, and obviously this is an area that's progressing so quickly. So it's
Absolutely. Yeah. Everyone is diving into this topic of IT for green, green for IT. Yeah.
yeah. Could you tell us a bit about your own research and how that might help provide a better way forward?
Yeah, actually, I'm running a research program at Nyenrode Business University right now. It's called long-term value creation. Beautiful term. And actually, 8 different companies are involved, and they all started to address a specific sustainability challenge. And along a period of 1 year, we are translating this challenge into an opportunity and finally into a solution that can be implemented as soon as possible. So the context for each company, like municipalities, insurance companies, IT companies, service providers. So it's a mix of, I would say, public and private companies. The ESG or sustainability challenges are all different. But the key topic is we would like to find a solution and ultimately a final endpoint, a solution that is based within what we call an ecosystem, because a lot of these challenges can only be solved by collaborating with business partners, IT suppliers, whatever kind of other partners. So you have to do it together. And we will use the perspective of digitalization. So how may digitalization, IT help to achieve your ESG or sustainability challenge? How to solve these challenges? And just as an example, one of the challenges from a mix between a large municipality in the Netherlands, actually the capital city of the Netherlands, and an IT supplier, is that the IT supplier is actually providing a whole range of IT services, including workplace automations, data centers, applications, etc. And the municipality asked their IT supplier, their service providers, okay, how can you decrease energy consumption, carbon dioxide emissions along the whole IT supply chain? And that's quite a challenge, because then the service provider had to start discussions with, for instance, Microsoft, Oracle, OpenAI, a lot of companies, how to achieve this overarching, I would say, sustainability challenge raised by the municipality. And we will tackle this question within a period of a year, and then everyone, or at least in this case, both companies can benefit from these kind of solutions.
Yeah, that seems like a huge question to tackle. Wow.
It is, yeah.
But
Well, what's
yeah.
fantastic about that is that it is showcasing examples, like you said, of tech for good, but also it's real companies, it's real business challenges, it's things that are happening in industry now. So rather than it being theoretical, which obviously so much of academia can be, this is, it's real life industry experience and practice, and then providing solutions. So hopefully in a year's time, when you come to the conclusion of this, there'll be some takeaways for business to be able to look at and then be able to apply to their own practices.
Yeah, for sure. That's ultimately our goal,
Yeah.
and the most beautiful output is always, can we publish it in the form of a book? So that's the idea, as a kind of an outcome, besides, let's say, specific interviews or questionnaires towards these kind of companies, organizations that are really actively involved. We also would like to publish, let's say, the outcome for each company, and also try to bundle all the outcomes in the form of a booklet.
Wow. In which case, we'll look forward to hearing more when the time comes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's all the questions we had for you. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been brilliant talking to you. It's been absolutely fascinating hearing what you've got to say about this. Yeah, it's as you know, it's a huge topic at the moment, and it's one that's being discussed really widely on social media at the moment as well. So it's great to get your perspective. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, and thank you for having me in the podcast series. So more than happy to contribute.
If you enjoyed this episode, please do like, share, and subscribe for more. And we'll see you next time.